Okay, this is 2.4, which were the critical issues at the convention. And the first one was about equality. The second one was representation of the states. And then the third was slavery, the third was slavery, and then voting. And all of these are kind of tied in together. But these are some of the problems that they had and how they solved them. The first was dealing with equality, and this issue took a lot of their attention, and it was how would votes be counted and what to do about slavery and how do we count the slaves. The first problem they had to resolve was how representation of the states. And there were a couple of ideas, and the first was the New Jersey plan, and it was proposed by William Patterson of New Jersey, and it said that each state should be equally represented. The second was the Virginia plan, and it was Edmund Randolph of Virginia, and he said that state representation in Congress should be based on the population. Now, here's the reason. Here's their motive. New Jersey is a little bitty state with not very many people, and they wanted to be counted. Virginia, on the other hand, they were the biggest state, and they wanted to be. It wasn't fair to them to have one vote, and New Jersey had one vote. So they ended up. That's why they wanted it to be counted by population. So the resolution was called the Connecticut Compromise, and William Johnson of Connecticut, he decided that you should create two houses, and this was what led to a bicameral legislature. One house, the Senate, means that each state gets two representatives. The second house, the House of Representatives, means that states are counted by population. So there are 435 people in the House of Representatives and 100 in the Senate. So that is how we came about to our bicameral legislature. It was because of the Connecticut Compromise, trying to resolve the issue of a representation, and it came out of the two plans, New Jersey and Virginia plans. Now the only problem with this is that even though, let's say, New Jersey gets two senators and two representatives, they have four people for so many population, but they still got these two guys representing them. They got these four people representing them. Virginia, on the other hand, if they have two senators and 8 or 10 representatives, they still have more, or they still have fewer people based on their population than New Jersey. So many have argued that it's unequal because of that. Now the next issue was with how to deal with slavery. They rolled around their heads about abolishing it, but it didn't work out. And Massachusetts, I think, was the only state where it was illegal. And so they came to a consensus or an agreement which was called the 3/5 Compromise. And so you had states who, like Massachusetts, they didn't have any slaves, but they had a large population. So it would be not in their best interest if slaves were counted for representation, because a state like Virginia, who had lots of slaves, would have a lot more population and a lot more representation than Massachusetts.
All calls are answered.
So they came up with the 3/5 Compromise. With the 3/5 Compromise. I'm sorry, the 3/5 Compromise, and what this did was it counted every 5 slaves as 3. That sounds very crude, but that's the way they came about it. And it was said the taxation were to be based on the number of free persons in the state plus 3/5 of the number of all other persons. So that's how they resolved the issue over slavery. And then the next issue is about voting, and this is cool because this is your first really act of federalism, where there's some states get some rights and the national government gets others. But with voting, some wanted to allow all free males to vote. Some wanted to restrict it to just males who owned property. But the decision or the agreement was that it would be left up to the states as to who would get to vote. Okay, the next thing is dealing with the economics in the Constitution. If you look on table 2.4 on page 46, you will not only see a great table, but you also see writ of habeas corpus, which was on the scavenger hunt the other day. But anyway, the economics of the Constitution, it gives some economic powers to Congress and restricts them to the states. So be familiar with that chart like states were not allowed to coin money or issue paper money. Can you imagine if every state could have its own money, what kind of hot mess we'd have? Tax imports or exports from abroad or from other states, these are prohibits. They couldn't pass laws impairing the obligations of contracting. They couldn't require payment of debts in paper money. And so make sure you kind of look over that, the economics of the Constitution, and that you are familiar with it. And lastly, at the bottom of that page is the individual rights issues, and they really wanted to focus on protecting individual rights. And the writ of habeas corpus is an order requiring authorities to explain to judge for what reason somebody's detained or arrested. You can't just hold somebody indefinitely. You gotta give them reason for why they are in custody. At the bottom of page 46, you probably want to read over some of those things that are important about individual rights with the Constitution. So that is 2.4. Make sure you understand the issues at the convention. Know the difference between the New Jersey and Virginia plans and how they resulted in the Connecticut Compromise. Okay? Know how they resolved the issue about slavery and representation, and the economic issues, how voting went to the states. The states decided who voted. The economic issues of the Constitution, and individual rights issues, and the writ of habeas corpus. And that pretty much sums up 2.4.